YouTube, what the Total War Rome 2 crap is going on? Trying to get some more of this in because I'm enjoying it. Kind of reminds me of the good old days, which weren't that long ago actually. So I in my last video I had mentioned that noble fighters can't stand up to Oathsworn, and I noticed that someone made a comment that I think is a common misconception, and I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Sometimes I'll hear people say, oh, I tested noble fighters or Lusitania nobles against these other units and they won. My big question I'd have to ask you is, did you test against the AI? Because if so, that muddies things greatly. The biggest reason why the Oathsworn will beat a mercenary noble fighter in a match against another human is because the human will use this shield wall ability, and then the Oathsworn will get a massive boost to, look, it says armor strength, melee defense, shield strength, all that. It's going to be big, and it's something that the noble fighter can overcome. So that's the reason why a noble fighter would lose to an Oathsworn, plus the fact that the Oathsworn is 40 talents cheaper and comes with shield wall. So you get a lot better bang for your buck, and that's why I said that. Now, Lusitania Noble, again, a very nice unit, and I'll show it real quick. And again, just by the stats, you may think that this unit would do it, but the big thing is here, armor. So again, you may be able to beat an AI unit with it if you're able to maybe wrap around the edges or whatever it is, but I highly doubt that you could test this against another person where you're on equal size formations, you charge head on, and the other person uses shield wall. You will not win this fight with the Lusitania Noble. Now, the good thing is they are cheaper than an Oathsworn, so it's possible they could trade cost effectively, but I doubt it. And again, a big piece is right here. Melee damage is only 30 base and 6 armor piercing, whereas if you look at the Oathsworn here, it's 45. There is slightly better armor piercing on the Lusitania, which again is nice, but that's a lot of extra damage. That's 10 extra damage per blow you're going to get with the Oathsworn, and the armor is 80 as opposed to 45. So that's a lot for just one extra armor piercing damage to overcome. And again, no shield wall on the Lusitania Noble. Plus, these guys are extremely vulnerable to missiles because they have a poor missile block chance. So for all intents and purposes, that's why I'm making the claim that I do, that Oathsworn are going to beat those guys. It won't happen, obviously, in every single case, but in any rational... Well, I'm not trying to say that you're irrational for disagreeing. I don't mean that way, so it sounds mean. I don't mean it that way. In every... just kind of, I don't know, just like a simple look at what people do online, you're going to see the Oathsworn come out on top, which is why you saw the Barbarian factions used so much in the tournaments. Now, that does not mean that in the campaign you may not be able to use these units to a different effect. I would agree with you entirely. In any case, hope that settles that for you. And some of you asked me to, do the Royal Spartans really beat the Praetorian Guard? I can try and show you that real quick. And I do have a battle for you, and if you want to skip to it, you can feel free to, but I was just going to show you unfortified town assault. We should be able to do this. Unfortified town assault, select map. Let's just grab Lepsis here, that'll be fine. We'll load the map. Basically what I'm going to do here is set myself as the defender on this map, and then I'm going to put the attacker as the Romans. And what we will do is just make sure I can get in a street somewhere to defend against the incoming Romans. I'll just put a bodyguard, and I'll put 2 Praetorian Guard, and I'll get myself 3 Royal Spartans. I won't fight all of them, but I'll just kind of give you an idea. I'll try and make sure it's like a one-on-one. Well, that's actually going to be the difficulty. We probably better just bring 1. I will make sure that it's a one-on-one match. I'm bringing more just in case, so I can cover from multiple angles, but you should see that you get a pretty... I'll even give him the Caesar ability here just for... Well, actually, we should probably not give them a useful ability. We'll give him this one, because it shouldn't have any sway in the battle, and I won't use any general abilities on my side. So this should give you an idea how, and the AI, don't get me wrong, is very, it's very challenged with the way that it uses its units and its special abilities. It's not very good at it. So it definitely skews test a little bit like this, but just to kind of show you that, yes, a Royal Spartan can absolutely take a Praetorian Guard in a head-on engagement. So what we'll do is just go ahead and start. I'm going to fast forward kind of figure out where the Romans are wanting to go. They'll probably want to go right here. Just going to move up a Royal Spartan. And I'll just block off basically every way that the AI can come from. So there is a ninja +5 versus infantry that you get when you are in a hoplite wall, and it is that +5 bonus that really gives the Royal Spartans a very punishing presence on the battlefield, I guess, here. So the Roman general may try and get around me. I'd really rather not have to kill the Roman general before the combat takes place with the Praetorians, but this is the problem with AI. The other problem with the AI is right now they are running and their units are going to be tired. So again, obviously this is why I suggested previously you really can't test against the AI. I just wanted to do this as a quick demonstration to demonstrate the feasibility, not as like an end-all, be-all doctrinal study in the case of Royal Spartans versus Praetorians. There are several factors that could go either way. If your Spartans are not in a hoplite phalanx, if they get outflanked, or something like that, obviously this changes. But the Spartans do have expert charge defense. However, the Praetorian Guard doesn't have a particularly large charge bonus, so that kind of actually protects them from the expert charge defense. So let's just freak, the Roman general's gonna try and get over here and get behind my Spartans, so I'm gonna have to try and keep the Roman general away from the fight, and I'm probably too late. If he runs a rear charge, it's gonna screw up my whole test. What the heck, man? The AI actually runs a successful rear charge? What a bunch of horse crap. Okay, well, it wasn't actually successful. So you can see that the Spartans start off behind, but they start to pick up kills pretty quick on the Praetorians, and it's because if you imagine right now, they're actually at 49 damage and 35 bonus with 84 melee defense, 105 armor, and 70 health. So that's 15 more armor and considerably more melee defense. So the Praetorians have a difficult time landing blows on the Spartans, and that's the biggest challenge they get. And Romans don't have a particularly large amount of armor piercing damage. Like the Roman general's even getting me attacked in the rear here. But you can see that, I mean, obviously one big mistake here that the AI does is it uses the use the whip ability too soon. And obviously I have to kill the enemy general here, which is unfortunate. So again, this is why you don't test versus the AI. But again, just to kind of give you a demonstration, that's what makes Royal Spartans so dangerous in the hoplite wall. That armor plus the crazy melee defense, stack that in with the bonus versus infantry, and a bonus versus infantry, if I understand it right, works kind of like extra armor piercing damage versus infantry. So again, stack that in, and if you were to take a look at the armor piercing damage of a Spartan, it's 8, and then stack that in with essentially what becomes 5 more in the bonus. And again, that's if I understand it right. I could be wrong, and someone can correct me, but that basically gives them like 13 armor piercing damage. The Spartans already have an elite spear, and that's where they get all that extra armor piercing damage from. So again, you can see that, yes, the AI screwed up, but you've got a convincing victory going on from a Royal Spartan here. One that is that still got hit a little bit in the rear by the Roman general, not a lot. And they were roughly the same width. You weren't really seeing a lot of overlapping from either unit. The Praetorian Guard, of course, was in formation attack, but I mean, again, there's lots of different ways this can sway, but someone wanted me to demonstrate this, so that's what I'm demonstrating here, that the Royal Spartan is absolutely capable of defeating a Praetorian Guard. It doesn't mean that in the right scenario a Praetorian Guard couldn't put them down, but I mean, just all things considered, I would feel more comfortable if I was in possession of the Royal Spartans than the Praetorian Guard. Plus, I think they're cheaper. So yeah, you can see they're 101 to 50 in the combat versus the Praetorian Guard. So, and the Roman general didn't actually kill any of my Spartans. So again, the Praetorian Guards start off quick. They get a lot of damage. Again, the big difference is, are your guys in the hoplite phalanx? If they're not, then they very well could lose that combat to the Praetorian Guard. So just something to keep in mind. Obviously, I'll have a link down in the description if you want to skip this, and you won't be hearing me say this because you will have skipped. Let's jump into an online battle. I have one here for you. This opponent was pretty cool guy. He joined in and asked me to pick a number between 1 and 11, and I assume he wanted me to pick a number that he was going to use for a faction, which is pretty gutsy. I had already selected Armenia, and I didn't change my faction once he picked, just to kind of make all things equal so that he would know what he was getting into. I wanted to play as Armenia. I haven't used them in a long time. They're a fun faction, and I'll kind of explain why I feel that way. I got 4 Axemen, 2 Cartley Axemen, which are here in the center. They're a pretty decent infantry unit. I've got 5 Eastern Slingers. These are a great skirmish unit. Huge benefit to Armenia. I've got 1 Eastern Cataphract here. Out here I've got 2 Persian cavalry. I don't know if these guys changed over time, but I used to feel like these guys weren't all that great, and maybe I was just always wrong, but they are very heavy shot cavalry, and they are not very expensive. At only 760 talents, they are a massive benefit to the roster of Armenia. Now over here, and Armenia can bring as many of them as they like. So here I've got a couple of Cappadocian cavalry, which are great melee cav. Now melee cav at these more expensive levels in Rome 2 can be more difficult to use. And then my general is this awesome, super heavy Royal Cataphract unit you can see walking past here. I'll try and get you a cool view of them. These guys are awesome. Cool looking. So let's take a look at the Carthaginian army I'm going to face. There's 3 mercenary Balearic Slingers up front. Get you a cool view. I love the unit skins on these guys, are pretty cool too. 3 mercenary Balearic Slingers versus 5 Eastern Slingers. It is quite possible, if used properly, the Balearic Slingers could win that just due to damage and rate of fire. However, you'll see that I've moved to my opponent's to my left flank, my opponent's right, and this should put me on his unshielded side, which should mean my shots are going to be hopefully scoring more hits across his or through his unshielded side. And I've moved up in such a way that he had to push his Balearic Slingers here to fire back, whereas my guys were already all focused on the 1 unit. So I'm going to hammer the 1 unit of Balearic Slingers, and it's going to take a minute to have an effect, because again, the Balearic Slingers are good. And now his guys are being brought into focus fire. So this is good. My opponent is focusing fire. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be the first one to make a cavalry feint so that he has to pull back. And I think he pulls back a little prematurely here, because in all reality, I don't want to run that attack. He's got mercenary Iberian swords, he's got mercenary noble fighters, Libyan infantry. My cataphracts would have gotten destroyed by his javelins. But I mean, sacrificing Balearic Slingers is a big risk, and I can see why he didn't want to take that. But that's why I made the feint first, is I wanted to be the one to benefit from him. If my opponent had made the feint first, I would have had to react to him and move my slingers back, which would have given him shots into my back. It's a pretty common cat and mouse game that you're going to see in any multiplayer for Total War. Noticing this, I try and bring my Cappadocians up in a slightly better support position, and sure enough, here comes a Carthaginian cav rocketing inbound for my Eastern Slingers. This is an appropriate response, I believe, for the Carthaginian player, and you can see his Carthaginian cav will kind of come back here and follow. I'm going to pull just 2 of my Slingers back at the last second, and I'm going to get a really nice Cappadocian cav charge into his Carthaginian cav, and it'll start to defeat them, and this is going to force my opponent to throw in a Libyan Hoplite here. Now, a late Libyan Hoplite is an excellent cavalry support unit, and a great pick by my opponent. His army is actually pretty interesting here. He's got a holding force in the center, with a couple of Carthaginian Hoplites, which are pretty decent bang for the buck. He's got 3 Libyan infantry. These 2 noble fighters are going to make up some serious hitting power. Libyan Hoplites on the flank, again, great support unit. And you can see here that this is already giving me problems, because my Cappadocian cav is now taking some pretty big losses to the late Libyan Hoplites, who are racking up kills at a phenomenal rate, and that's because they have a 30 bonus versus cav. That is enormous. Now here I engage my general. I don't get the best charge, but I had to stop his Carthaginian cav. But he is going to peel off this noble fighter, and this is going to be very bad for me. Over here, though, I'm going to get a very nice rear charge with my Cappadocian cavalry, clear a lot of these late Libyan Hoplites, and finish off the Carthaginian cav. The problem is that this very cheap late Libyan Hoplite has killed 23 of my Cappadocian cavalry. That unit has done an excellent job on its part. My Persian cavalry here is going to hit the Carthaginian cav. That'll be a victory for them. And here I need to pull back. He's again using his late Libyans to good effect. And then I'm holding an Eastern Cataphract in reserve to go after high-priced units like this mercenary noble fighter. though I am going to have to be careful of this mercenary Iberian swordsman. I cannot ignore it, or else it will javelin my cavalry to death. They're extremely good for that, and again, an excellent pick on the part of my opponent. And my opponent does engage me across the center, gets a little blobbed up, so I'm going to fling a couple of units into the combat here and outflank him. However, on this flank, my guys are crumbling pretty quickly to his Libyan infantry, and he's got other support units very close, and he's going to swing his general around. So I'm in very big danger of losing my my right flank pretty quickly. However, I have mopped up his cavalry on this flank, and over here I'm going to mop up this cavalry. Here he does kind of get into my slingers, unfortunately. And his Carthaginian cav's going to do a lot of good work, but my general's going to come in and get rid of them, so I can save the remainder of my slingers, which could be an important tool in the late game. I try and get a charge with my general. It's a very screwy charge, and then again, look at the javelins coming off of these Iberian swordsmen. For only costing 300 something talents and getting 8 to 10 kills here on an Eastern Cataphract, they've done an excellent job. The mercenary noble fighters got javelins in, so I'm losing a lot of Eastern Cataphracts without doing much damage. That's very unfortunate for me. I do get away with a lot of my slingers, and his Carthaginian cav is going to die. Again, his Carthaginian cav out here is going to die to my Cappadocians, and then my mercenary, or my Persian cavalry has destroyed his late Libyan hoplites. I'm going to crunch into these mercenary Iberian swordsmen and get rid of them. And then now I'm going to just start harassing this noble fighter to try and keep it out of combat. An excellent rear charge here by the Carthaginian general. He's going to rack up some serious kills against my axemen. See that number start to skyrocket there. Great number of kills for the bodyguard. He's doing a good job with that unit, keeping it safe and impacting the battle. However, in the meantime, my Persian cavalry now is going to start doing some serious wrecking on what's left of his slingers. And I now have 4 slingers over here that are just absolutely pouring fire into the back of a mercenary noble fighter, and it is dropping like flies. And he's going to try and reinforce with a late Libyan, but he probably would have been better off to try and chase. However, my general could have just crunched the late Libyan and gotten rid of it if it was not braced. The noble fighter is now starting to take damage. It's down 20 men, and I'm going to start cycle charging the death out of it. So that's where you charge in and hit, charge out again and hit, and over until a unit's dead or until your cavalry dies trying, and they will get a lot of kills from the impact damage. The infantry fight in the center, definitely going in the favor of the Carthaginian. I only have a few infantry units left. Some of these Cartly axemen right here doing a pretty good job for me, tanking out a lot of damage. Another Cartly axeman right here is holding out quite nicely, 124 kills, but now it's going to be outflanked by the noble fighters. But again, you can see that I'm harassing the noble fighters constantly. They get an okay-ish rear charge, but they're going to get pelted by this charge from all my heavy cavalry, and it's going to really take a toll. They just went from 90 down to 70, and look, I can pull out, and I'm going to barely lose any cav here. The pullout is not near as bad on Rome 2 as long as you leave in the appropriate direction as it is on Attila. And even if you leave in the inappropriate direction, it's not as bad as it is on Attila. The mercenary noble fighters over here were murdered by my slingers, and now I'm just kind of picking more targets with them. There's another mercenary noble fighter. This is the one that I just rear charged, and now it's going to be picked at by my slingers. So again, this shows you the value of Eastern slingers. Very cheap, lots of ammo. They do not have the elite slinger attack like the Balearic slinger, but they can dish out a lot of damage for a very low cost, which makes Eastern slingers are honestly one of the best skirmish units in the game just by price and usefulness. And they really give Armenia and other factions that have them a much needed tool. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not meaning to bash on Balearic slingers, but they are expensive and they have to be used properly. Now his general feints a charge at my Royal Cataphracts, and I'm like, you know what, I'm actually okay if you want to sit here and fight me. And then the Carthaginian general decides that he doesn't really want to die just yet, so he pulls away from my Royal Cataphracts, and that's fine too. At this point, I'm not worried about my infantry here winning or losing the game. I've got a little more infantry out here, and I'm just pouring sling fire into the back of this fight. And then I just get a really excellent heavy cav charge and basically flatten all of his infantry in this vicinity. And then my general is going to swing around to try and deliver the killing blow here. But I mean, the Carthaginian infantry at this point just got absolutely wrecked. They got hit by 3 very heavy cavalry units from behind. And that's more than just about any infantry can take and survive. I don't know a lot of infantry units that can survive much of that punishment. So the Carthaginian army is defeated here. I think the main reason why I was able to pull out this victory here is just by being able to deal with those noble fighters. The noble fighters are excellent units, and I would typically agree with seeing them in a Carthaginian army. And I'm not necessarily saying I disagree with him here, but I would have certainly only brought 1 rather than 2. And then probably he could have spent some money elsewhere to make things more difficult for me. When you think about an Armenian army, it's very likely that they're going to be bringing Cappadocians, Persian cavalry, all those units that are very predictable because they're Armenia's best. And they offer some of the best. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean a player always does that, but you know what I mean. It's probably going to happen. So I think that if I were the Carthaginian player, what they may have considered here is foregoing the Balearic slingers and tanking out more infantry power here, and then just trying to overwhelm the Armenians. Yes, they'd have skirmishers, and yes, they'd have cataphracts, but if you're throwing Iberian swordsmen and late Libyan hoplites in combination versus cataphracts while your cavalry tries to get through and get to slingers, it can be quite effective. It won't work every time, and sometimes you may wish you had slingers. But I'm just saying that, I mean, you have to spend this much money on slingers. It's going to make it even more difficult to deal with the excellent cavalry of the Armenians. So in some ways I would rather just ignore the slingers, because most of the cheap Carthaginian units like these spears and stuff have good armor. And then the one noble fighter might be easier to protect from all of the eastern slingers. So I don't know. Anyway, and some of you may be wondering, Air, why'd you line up all your slingers on the left side? I think I described that, but it was because the enemies hold their shield with the left hand. So if you sometimes line your skirmishers up on your left side, they're firing into the unshielded flank, potentially, of an enemy force. I don't always put my missile units to the left, but that's just kind of a little word to the wise if you want to consider a thing. And then here, putting my guys to the left served a dual purpose. It was in order to, number one, get those unshielded shots, like I said, and then 2, it's going to draw an enemy who has more symmetrically placed their missiles in the center. They're going to have to move those missile troops to face your guys on the left, or they'll be overwhelmed. And as they move, it should give you the first shot. It doesn't mean that it'll always work. An opponent who's crafty can use their cavalry or other stuff to basically outmaneuver you there. And so, again, it's not a guarantee, but it's a certain strategy that can be used from time to time. Hope you all enjoyed this. HeirofCarthage, signing off for now. I will see you soon.